Hi, I'm Larry Magid, CEO of ConnectSafely, and I'm with Dana Miller, an associate with the National Criminal Justice Training Center of Fox Valley Technical College. Dana, it's nice to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Larry.
So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do and why you do it?
Sure. So you and I have spoken before. I used to work with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, a national law enforcement task force with regional task forces within the states, and they combat online child exploitation.
So, I wonder if you talk for just a minute about what are the most serious risks, and then also put them into a broader perspective in terms of the probability of a person or child being exploited in that way.
The interesting thing about online safety is that everything's kind of interconnected, right? And so when we talk about maybe the risks of online sharing or cyberbullying or oversharing, those types of things, they're all interconnected, right? And they do kind of flow into what I think is our biggest risk right now, which is sextortion, which I know we'll be talking
Mm-hmm.
about. So I think something else that I've seen as a growing risk for our kids is just a reduction in boundaries, I'm going to say, as kind of an overall category. Boundaries in terms of what our kids are willing to share, how quickly they're willing to share it, how quickly they're willing to ask for other people to share it.
So it sounds like you're talking about a spectrum or a continuum where something which may not appear, at least initially, to be a huge risk can lead to the possibility of something very serious happening.
Exactly. And I think that that's what we see a lot of because let's talk about sextortion, for instance, right?
Yes.
In most cases, when we see sextortion happens, it's because there was at some point a sexual image shared, whether or not that was consensual or they were manipulated into that, or that there was some sort of conscious decision to involve themselves with sexting. And then those images are then used to perpetrate this extortion.
And tell us a little bit more about sextortion. How does it work and who is mostly affected by it? Well, I've heard that teenage boys are a big victim, which was initially counterintuitive, but perhaps you could explain why that is a risk factor for boys.
Definitely. So sextortion is what it sounds like. It's extorting for sexual content. And now we've seen that transition into sometimes extorting for payment, financial payment, with the threat of sharing that sexual content or posting that sexual content, something that's going to embarrass that victim. And so traditionally, we did see teenage females more often be the victims of this. And the idea was if, you sent me this photo, if you don't send me more, I will post it to your friends, to your school group, whatever it might be. And now what we've seen that transition into is teenage boys are generally the victims of this currently, and they are manipulated into this. They meet somebody online that they think is a female. That female sends an image of them to the male, a sexting image. The teenage male then responds in kind and responds with some sort of sexting image. And then they flip and say, if you don't pay me money, I'm going to post this to your friend group. I'm going to share this with your
Yeah.
family, something that's going to embarrass them. Complying with these demands often doesn't stop the risk, right? It actually heightens the risk because then they'll turn around and sextort for more. Or they might go ahead and follow through with their threats anyway and post the images out there anyway. It doesn't matter to them if they've already gotten the money or gotten the things that they're demanding. One of the things that we saw is that they progress so rapidly. We're seeing this and this manipulation happen in a much more condensed time frame.
Help me understand a little more about why it's important that you not send them money. It's my understanding that sometimes they actually don't follow through on the threat because they're really only interested in your money. So they have no other reason to bother committing that extra crime of actually distributing your image if you're not going to give them money. So correct me if I'm wrong about that. And also that even if they do and this all happens, will they stop or will they not send them out just because you did send them an initial payment?
Right, exactly. And it's a toss up. It's a toss up whether or not they will carry through with those threats, right? We've seen instances where you'll read the chat excerpts and you'll read that the victim says, no, forget you. I know that you don't have my image. I never sent that to you, or I don't care. Do what you want. Send that out. And the perpetrator moves on because, like you said, their goal is to get money. So they're going to move on to somebody that
And they don't care otherwise. Yeah.
they don't care. And the other side of that is we'll see instances where payments are made and then they share those images anyway.
Talk a little bit about, is there life after extortion? Let's say the worst does happen. Does life go on? Can you recover from this emotionally and reputationally?
Absolutely. And Larry, I'm glad that you brought that up because it is an important thing that we draw attention to that. It's going to be difficult, certainly. It's going to be embarrassing for some people if this happens. And there are a lot of resources out there to help people get through it. There's resources to help get images removed, to get images flagged, and to try to respond to some of that stuff. I think that part of our response to this sort of thing needs to be an understanding that the victims are never to blame for these situations. Children are never to blame for being manipulated into something and being tricked into sharing this kind of content. And I think we're seeing as a society that we are starting to understand that and come around to that. It's
Yeah.
not widespread enough, but we're getting there, right? But you will have support. And the thing to realize is that we can always get through a situation, right? Everybody makes mistakes and you can always get through it and come out okay on the other side with those resources.
And we're running out of time, but very briefly, if you could just give us a kind of a 1, 2, 3 on how young people can protect themselves. What should you keep in mind as you go online and make sure you're not a victim of any form of cybercrime?
The main thing we need to talk about is breaking down the barrier to reporting and making sure that kids know that no matter what has happened, no matter what is happening, they can always ask for help, and they can ask for help right now. The other thing that I guess I would mention is we talk a lot about being cautious about who you're talking to, and that's a message that we can always continue to share. But if somebody does manipulate you, and if, let's say, an instance of sextortion takes place, stop responding to them right away. Don't pay them. Don't respond to them. Just block them and start saving those screenshots so that you've got that evidence. But don't comply with their demands. Don't feed into that. And it's not going to matter if you pay them hundreds of dollars, which a lot of people are doing. It's just going to make it that much more difficult for you to recoup that as you're also trying to get back to a place of safety and security for yourself. And always know that you can report online to the platforms, to the websites, and to the cyber tip line if there's online exploitation happening.
Dana Miller with the National Criminal Justice Training Center of Fox Valley Technical College. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks for having me, Larry.